Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ricky's Kitchen and USA Global TV's United Kitchens. And Happy New Year. We are today going to do two desserts just because it's going to be New Year's tomorrow night. And as a chef and a nutritionist, we can eat a little bit of sugar at this point. And I know there's some people who would argue with me, but I think that every once in a while we need to kind of just grab something that really makes us happy for the moment, at any rate. So we're going to do some poached pears in red wine, and I'll show you what they look like when they're finished in just a moment. And then we're going to do, for those of you out there who really want to stick to a vegan diet or stick to something that has very little sugar in it, although it actually does have, they do have some sugar, maple syrup and coconut sugar, but we're going to use monk fruit instead. They're called the best vegan black bean brownies. So we'll have fresh pears that are poached in wine and some black bean brownies that are a little, they're really a marvelously moist and yummy chocolate treat. So I am Ricki Mckenna. I am the chef that's on United Kitchens, and we'll have some other people in the coming year. But I do want to thank everybody for being with us for this whole past year. It's been a treat. It's been a lot of fun. And I hope you've all enjoyed it, and you'll come back and see us again next year on Fridays, which means next Friday. Okay, with that, let's get started. I've chosen d'Anjou pears. You can use d'Anjou or Basque. And when you choose your pears, try to find some that are just about right, but not at all soft. If you can push them in very easily, then they're a little bit, they may be a little bit gooey. Peeler that is actually, you can use a regular potato peeler or that. I'm using a peeler that has a serrated edge, kind of. It's hard to show you. I would try to show you that, but it's a little bit difficult to see that because it's almost like corduroy, if you know what I mean. There's lines in it. And so we're going to peel each of the pears and then get them ready. I have a pot that is big enough to lay them on their sides. You have to have something that will accommodate 3 or 4 pears laying on their side in the wine so that they poach well. And of course, they're nice and white now, but I will show you in a few minutes how they come out. And we're going to be using just a fairly good Cabernet Sauvignon. Choose your red wine, whatever you really prefer. And you can use a wine that's specific for cooking. As a matter of fact, this one actually, unfortunately for drinking, is past its prime. But, okay, there we have one. But you can use any red wine that you choose. I would prefer to use a dry white red wine, although you can use a sweeter red if you like, and maybe use a little bit less sugar in the poaching. So, let's see. And the other thing, I think you can see it at the front of the camera. What you're seeing, if no one has done this before, these are fun things to do, especially if you have children or grandchildren. You take an orange, and you can do it with a lemon as well, but the orange and whole cloves are what I used to make a pomander ball, which is something that smells absolutely divine because you've got the combination of orange and cloves. And if you take it and put it on the table, you can use it as a table decoration. You can also take it and put it in a pot with boiling water, or let the water steam around it. You can put it on a steamer, and the aroma from the combination of the orange and the cloves, they're just stuck in there, and it's a test to see if your thumb really is pretty tough, by the way, when you put in the whole cloves in there. You can use it. It will add a lovely fragrance to your kitchen if you put it in simmering water and let it just simmer for a while. So that's another little goodie you can do for the holidays, or really any time, and have your kitchen just smell divine. Now, it's interesting, the other two pears were quite firm, and this one is a little bit riper, and it's a little more slippery as I'm peeling it. So just be aware of that when you choose your pears. As I said, you want them just beginning to ripen so that they're not gooey. And you know how soft and messy pears can get. Well, this one's a little bit softer, so the juice is coming off in my hand as I'm turning it around and peeling it. But that's okay, we can work with it. There we go. And oh yes, of course, remember to get pears that have stems, because they look much prettier when you sit them up that way. Before I put them into poach, I'm going to cut the bottoms on each of them so that they will stand up straight when you put them on a plate. So we'll just even out the bottoms, not much, just enough to have them stand up like little sentinels. And there we go. Okay, so our pears are ready. And to be very honest with you, since I'm a proponent of scrub, don't peel, I did scrub the pears prior to peeling them, but I'm going to take the peels because there's an awful lot of nutrition in here, in any skin from the fruit, and they will probably go into a smoothie either tomorrow morning or maybe even later this afternoon. Depends on where you are, of course. Okay, get the hands a little cleaner. Now, as I said, you have to have a pot that's deep enough and big enough diagonally to hold the 3 pears or 4 that you put in on their sides. And we will take approximately 2 cups of the red wine. And actually, I'm just going to eyeball it, especially since this is really great for cooking. Yeah, a little bit more. Okay, there we have it. And we'll just put that on the range. And I'm also going to add a couple of cinnamon sticks into the brew. If I can get them out of the jar. Here we go. We'll put in 2 cinnamon sticks. You can use 1 or 2 depending on how much you like. And we will also add a 1/4 cup of monk fruit instead of sugar. So I've got my little 1/4 cup measurement over here. Now to me, that's a lot of sugar. I normally would not do that, but this is for desserts. And since it's a special occasion, we'll go for it. You could use regular granulated sugar. You can use coconut sugar, whatever you prefer, but this is just, it's monk fruit, so it is a sugar substitute that has no calories. So I'm going to pour that in the middle and kind of around. There we go. And give it a little stir. Now, I just want to give you a shot of what this looks like when you're starting off, because we will turn the pears a couple of times so that they can get completely poached, and you'll see what happens because the colors will be different. Okay, now you can see that they're laying in the water, but they're not covered completely by it. So I can take either my spoon, which I will now, carefully, and just pour a little of the wine over each of them. There we go. as it heats up. Okay. And also there's another gadget. If you happen to have one of these, which is basically a spaghetti spoon, it works beautifully for turning the pears, but be careful not to stab them while you're doing it. If you're using that, you just want to be gentle with these. And we're going to cover them. That is, if I can find the cover. Ah. I normally don't leave it there. There we go. We're going to cover those and set them up. Once they start to boil, then I'll turn them back down to simmer, because you want them to simmer, not boil completely. The other thing that I'm going to add is the juice from this beautiful orange. And I'm going to skin it first because we need 3 inches worth of the rind to put in there officially. So we've got about a 3-inch strip to add to the water. So we've added cinnamon sticks, orange rind, and of course the wine, and a little bit of sugar. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some more of these to the water, and I'll tell you why. After taking these out, when they do get boiled and simmered through the whole thing with the wine, what I found yesterday was we took the peels and I sliced them into little teeny skinny pieces. And I'll show you later how we do that. And they're absolutely delicious. We use them on the plate as decoration. But right now I'm going to take this orange and cut it into quarters so that I can juice it in there. So in addition to the wine, the cinnamon stick, and the orange peel, we're going to juice a whole orange in there. So we have a combination of things, and we have to do this very carefully. Because otherwise, this is a lemon squeezer, so otherwise if we do it quickly, we might get orange juice all over the kitchen and not as much of it in the pot where it belongs. Okay. And what's nice is doing it this way is you can pour it over the fruit. And if you love your oranges, you can always munch on these later. So that goes in the bowl with the pear peel, which will eventually, as I said, be in a smoothie. I do not like waste. Now, if you're really into taking care of using every part of something, you can take the rest of the orange before it's actually used and zest it, which I do very often, and I will put a whole bunch of orange zest and lemon zest into my freezer so that when I need it, I have it there. But right now we're just going to juice this little orange, and it's got a fairly thick peel, which is fine. Okay, we're starting to bubble up now, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. All right. And juice the rest of the orange in there. And we have such pretty colors between the red wine and the oranges and the pears. And it just is beginning to smell divine, by the way. So if you find you're doing this while you have company and people kind of walk into your kitchen, you'll know why. It smells absolutely delicious. Good enough to eat, as they say. All right, here we go. We're almost there. Actually, I think we'll do the 3/4 of this orange is quite good enough. I'm just going to give it a little stir. Oh yeah, it's beginning to boil. So I'm I'm going to turn it down to medium and let it simmer. Okay. And I'll just give you a look at that for a second so you can see what I'm talking about, since it is bubbling. You can see it's doing a little bit more than simmering, so I'm going to turn it down to medium low and then cover it so it'll cook faster. Meantime, let's get started on our brownies. And I will give this, since we have some orange juice and pear juice, I'll just give it a little cleanup before I start on the brownies. All right. Here we go. I think we're done with that. And we're done with that. And I just want to say about the holidays, this is a wonderful time to make all your favorite goodies for people. And really, I wouldn't say don't worry about all the sugar, because people are consuming sugar by the gallons at this point with all the parties and everything else happening. But I think we can all get through this fairly well. Okay. One more thing I do want to put in, speaking of those cloves, I'm going to throw a few cloves into the pot as well. Like 2 or 3 is all you really need, just to give it that clove flavor mixed in with the wine and the orange juice. Okay, so there we go. And we'll put our pomander aside and we'll start just for fun. Before I go into the brownie department, I want you to see how wonderfully pretty the pears are when they're done. And let me see if I can get this out. Here we go. There. See how pretty they look when they sit up on the plate? And we will have, of course, 3 more. But you can serve them on a plate all by themselves. And what we'll do is reduce the wine mixture, and we'll have a beautiful sauce to pour over them afterwards. So I just want you to see how pretty they come out. I'll move this over here. And of course, you can serve them cold, or you can heat them up and warm them up in your oven, by the way. Just put them in a glass baking dish in your oven, and I would cover them with a wee bit of aluminum foil. Stand them up, put them in the oven at about 200 to 250 to warm them up for only about 10 or 15 minutes. You don't want to really cook them through because they've already been cooked through. And you don't want mush when people start cutting into them. So, and now for the brownies. Okay, and these are a vegan treat, which is really, it's very interesting because it only takes about 20 minutes to cook them. And we're going to put up my timer on for about 20 minutes for poaching these lovelies, and I'll turn them over in a couple of minutes so we get both sides into the brew. All right, now we've got some oats, which I made into flour, and we're going to have to get our blender out. Let's see, and a few other things to make the brownies. So we'll have a lovely accompaniment if you want to do that. For the poached pears. Just move things around a little bit. There we go. My assistant did not show up today, so you just get me. All right, let's get a bowl so we can mix these goodies. And you can see what's going on. As I say, these are vegan brownies. And we will be using a can of organic black beans, which has been drained. And I'm going to take my black beans Let's see. I'm going to hold them here for a second and show you the flour because I need a 1/4 cup of the flour. Use about a 1/4 cup of oats to get the flour, which puffs it up a little bit. So it's a wee bit over a 1/4 cup. But that's what I'm going to measure in here. And I used whole grain oats as opposed to just the flaky ones that you use for oatmeal. I use the they're a little bit more grainy. So I had to process them a little bit longer, but we'll have our 1/4 cup of oats. And I think I'm going to add just a tad more there. Because as I said, when you put them in the blender and you make it into a flour, it builds it up a little bit. It puffs it up a little bit. So now we have the oats in there. And actually, I think we're going to put it directly into the blender. Here we go. Now, normally I would have had the oats in here, so we will now put them in there. Let's get all that out. Be careful not to sample the edge of the blade. Okay, so now we will put in our black beans on top of the flour. And all the rest of the goodies to make the brownies. You can use coconut oil, but it would have to be softened. Let's see what we have here. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to add some cocoa powder. I believe we add a couple of tablespoons of cocoa powder. Blender. Let's see, we've used a 15-ounce can of the black beans, and we need a 1/2 cup of our flour. So I'm going to take my little 1/4 cup measurement and do 2 of those. Here's our 1/4 cup. And okay. All right. Oh, it smells yummy. It's just pure cocoa. And we'll add a little baking soda. I believe we have a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And I think it's a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we'll take our good old sea salt and measure 1/2 teaspoon. Yeah, maybe just a teeny bit more. There we go. Make sure we get that done. And let's see what else goes in there. Coconut sugar. So again, we're going to use our monk fruit. And it calls for, and here's where I kind of argue, if you're using sugar, you can use, it calls for 1/4 cup of coconut sugar. But not having coconut sugar, I'm going to use the monk fruit, or you can use confectioner's sugar. And this is a tablespoon and a half. So I'm using 3 tablespoons, which is almost equal to a 1/4 cup. And it also calls for stevia, which I do not use. So I think that's going to be enough of that to make up for the sweetness in the brownies. Plus, we're going to be using some dark chocolate chips. Here we go. This is going to be interesting. Okay, now we need a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. there's the rest of your sweetener if you want to use it. And actually, the last time I made these, I did not use the maple syrup, but I'm just going to add a tablespoon and not a quarter cup. And yes, I'm using the same tablespoon that had the cocoa in it, but that's okay, because it will all end up in there in the blender. And next we have coconut oil. But first we're going to turn our pears over. They are happily simmering away here in the wine. So we're going to turn them over so we get both sides. There we go. That's the reason for having them laying on their side, so they can get completely coated. And you'll see how pretty they come out very shortly. Okay. And now we're going to take our coconut oil. You can use either coconut oil if it's soft enough. I'm going to use liquid. It's MCT oil, which is the same thing. And it's also a quarter cup of that. So we're going to pour in our oil because there's no liquid in here so far. And let's see if I can get the quarter cup. There we go. And if you notice, there's no eggs and really no other liquid ingredients. It calls for, this is vanilla, which often gets very tight when you close it. So I'll have to look for my goody gadget. There we go. And it's a 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Okay, okay. Here's our vanilla. And possibly, I'm just going to take 1 tablespoon of water and put it in there. And as you all know, I have my kettle always ready. So we're going to take the tablespoon, just barely, of water and put it in there for liquid. And then we will blend. Okay, now, if you want to, now's the time to take some chocolate chips and put them in, about a tablespoon or 2. The dark chocolate. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon and a half. Whoops, it went in there by itself. Okay, just a few, just to mix in well. And you can always put some on top as you're putting it in to bake. So here we go. We're going to make a little bit of noise. Let's see if we can get this going. And I can let you look at that, which is kind of fun to watch it all blend together. I think you can see it. Almost. We'll just move the camera a bit. There we go. And so we'll be a little bit noisy for a couple of seconds here. We're going to oil the pan. Ah, lovely. Take my favorite little spatula and make sure, oh, that's beautiful. Might need a teeny bit more liquid. So I think what I'm going to do is add just another, not quite a tablespoon of the water, because it's quite thick. And we don't want it, right now it looks like chocolate icing. So I'm going to take another, whoop, there we go. And give it another whirl. As soon as I push it all down to where I think it's going to be blending. You can see it. I think you can see it. If I move it over a little bit, you can see how thick it is. It's almost like chocolate fudge. So you know that the brownies are going to be absolutely delicious. Okay, we'll get that down to where it all will blend. All right. Bit noisy, but it certainly does the job. Okay. So here we have, let's get back to the other camera so you can see what we're doing. I've got my coconut oil, and I'm going to take, I took a couple of paper towels. I'm going to oil my 8-inch square baking pan. Oil it very well, because there's not a lot of oil in the brownies and you don't want them to stick. And I've done this before. Make sure you get into the corners so that you get every bit of the goody goodies, all the good stuff out. Now, and if you're going to take these to someone's home, if you're going to make them as a gift, other than for yourself, I recommend leaving them in the refrigerator for at least 3 to 4 hours before you transport them. And remember that there's nothing really in here. There's nothing that has gluten. The only thing close to it would be the oats as the flour. So I think we're pretty well oiled here. And so I'm going to take my spatula and pour my brownies in. Yeah. I have to move the mix. It is kind of gooey and fudgy. And I'm going to get as much of it off the blades as I can before I take the rest of it out. There we go. And if at this point you want to give it a taste, be my guest, because I'm going to do that. And I guarantee that you will love it, because it's really very chocolatey and very fudgy. So, okay. And it's not going to pour like some cake batters will. So you have to really dig it out. You can see what I'm doing. Here we go. And spread it on the pan. As I say, it's more like chocolate fudge at this point. And what I may do is just sprinkle a little bit of water in the middle of this, although it really doesn't need it. There we go. And the brownies are really delightfully chewy, very chocolatey. And let's see, we can get all the good stuff out. There we go. And you can see it's in the midst of the pan in the middle. And what I might do is add just a teeny bit of the coconut oil itself. I've got maybe a teaspoon here. And I'm going to just swirl that around into it so that it provides a little bit more moisture as I'm moving the batter to fill the pan. And my suggestion is don't go directly all the way into the corners. Go most of the way in. It will spread out a teeny bit, but you're going to have nice, thin, almost cookie-like, but they are definitely brownies. And we're going to make it look pretty on top. And spread it out as evenly as you can. Let's see if I can get that off. I'm tempted to use my fingers, but I'm not going to. Here we go. So you'll have two goodies for desserts wherever you're going, or if you're staying home and you're serving. And so there we go. We'll fill up the corners a little bit. As I said, not really jamming the batter into the corners, but just smooth it out as much as you want. So it's fairly even in the pan. It is quite shallow, but that's okay. Here we go. I'm a bit fussy about how my brownies come out, so I'm being really careful. There we go. Okay. And now we'll pop them in the oven for 20 minutes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take them back out for 2 seconds here. Make sure I close my oven so I don't lose the heat. And just on one side, I'm going to sprinkle some of those chocolate chips. Just a few, just for fun. And to make it a little bit chocolatier, you can also chop them up if you like, because these are the big chocolate chips. So we can chop them up a bit if I wanted to, but I think we'll just don't use a whole bunch of them because there's plenty of chocolate in there. And the one thing that I am going to do is very carefully press them down into the batter, just slightly. So we've got half with the chocolate chips on top and half without. So for your real chocolate lovers, they get the half with the chocolate chips. All right. Now we can pop them in. And put our timer back to 20 minutes and see how our pears are doing. What I'm going to do with the pears now is turn them over again. Very carefully with my big spoon. Lovely. Oops. As I say, be careful when you turn them because they will get soft. Of course, they're cooking. And so be really careful not to take nicks out of them or poke them. There we go. Now you'll notice also, even with the cover on, let me give you a shot at that. So you can see that the liquid is actually reducing by itself right now. Even though it's covered, it's cooking covered, it has reduced quite a bit. I'm just going to pour a little more on top. Let's see. Yeah, you can see. And make sure everything's mixing nicely in there. Cover it back up and brew. Okay. So Just wondering if anybody has any questions or comments at this point. It's hard for me to see the comments. If someone has, said anything in there, it would be lovely. I would love to answer, but I actually cannot read them, and I apologize for that. Well, at any rate, okay, here goes the taste test. Now that I've got a little bit of the batter left over. Oh boy. Those are yummy. They're actually quite densely chocolate with just, a couple of tablespoons of chocolate. Well, actually half a cup. Not bad. So what I'd like to show you now, you've seen how pretty the pears come out. And we will be serving them. What I'm going to do now is take this little pomander, and I wanted to show you how the oranges actually come out, the peels. So I'm going to cut a little teeny tiny slice off this orange, off the bottom, which is really good to use for a garnish. But when you're doing this, you can take these and just split them in half and decorate. It's really pretty. And if you're like me, you'll eat the garnish anyway. So, at any rate there. So for a very happy, healthy new year, you'll have your pears poached in the wine, as well as a little bit of orange peel for a peel, pun intended. There we go. And actually, I'm going to take the other one out too and show you how pretty that is and how the liquid has thickened. The wine has thickened. Here we go. So we have 3 beautiful pears for serving, and my liquid is quite thick. And it becomes a beautiful sauce when you're serving. And the orange just adds color as well as a delightful aroma in addition to the pears. And we should have the brownies. Well, I'm afraid we won't be seeing, we might see the brownies. But we will see more of the pears because they are poaching beautifully. And, well, what I can tell you right now is for the poached pears, you're getting a wonderfully, not only pretty dessert that tastes great. That wine sauce is marvelous. It also works over ice cream. So if you have some leftover sauce from the pears, when you're finished serving them, I would suggest getting some vanilla ice cream or whatever your favorite flavor may be and putting them on there, putting the sauce on there. It's a wonderful wine sauce. And of course, if you're worried about children, the alcohol burns out. So there's nothing really to worry about. It's just the aromatic flavor and the aromas from the wine that make it absolutely delicious. I've also tried it over berries, which works pretty well. And if you're a purist and you want to try it over some yogurt, make sure you get plain yogurt, please. The thick Greek kind. And it will work over any other fruits. So actually, it's delicious with bananas. And let's see what else. With the oats in the brownies, because we've got oats, we've got black beans, and of course they're vegan because there's nothing else in there. There's no eggs and nothing like that in any of them. So you've got a perfectly wonderful gift for people who are vegans or vegetarians. And they're not icky sweet. They are sweet, but make no mistake. What you do with them once they come out of the oven, chocolates everywhere, is you let them sit for about 5 minutes out and put them in the refrigerator before you cut them. Normally, when you take brownies out, or a cake or something like that, you would cut them right away. Do not do that. Put them in your refrigerator. You can cover them with a piece of foil or a glass cover, depending on what you use to cook in. And put them in the refrigerator for about at least 20 minutes to half an hour. An hour would be even better. And then take a rounded edged knife and cut through them, however you want to do them. Because the baking makes it even softer than it was. And you could see how thick and fudgy it was. But once you take them out and it's baked, put them in the refrigerator and leave them there for, as I said, at least 30 minutes, actually, before you attempt to cut them, because otherwise when you try to cut them, they'll splatter. So you want them to get a little bit more firm in the refrigerator. So that's my hint for that. Let's see. And you can, if you want to keep the shape of a brownie, you could almost cook these in anything you want, but most brownies are either squares or rectangles, so cut them up the way, however you want. The last time I made this, I used a round pie plate, actually. So we cut them almost like pizza pieces, but then we cut them smaller pieces, like pizza bites almost of the brownies. But they will come out beautifully, and if you've oiled the pan well enough with your coconut oil or even with butter, of course that takes them out of the vegan category, unless you use a vegetarian or a vegan butter, but they will come out very easily from the pan. And so you can just pile them up. And I do have pictures to show you, but in the meantime, I think, let's take a look at the pears and see how they're doing. They're bubbling beautifully. Actually, I'm going to turn them down a little bit more. Oop. And give them a little more spooning the sauce over them. Ah, does that smell good? Mm. And as I said earlier, you have enough room for your pears to lay down in the pot, and also leave enough room for yourself to get a spoon in, or you can use a baster, like a turkey or chicken baster. And just keep spooning the mix over the pears. And I think they're pretty much done. They've actually been in for about 20 minutes, so I'm going to take them off and show you what we do from here, and how they get this marvelously beautiful red color. We'll take that batch. Okay. I'm carefully taking them out, not to bruise them. As you know, pears bruise easily anyway, but especially when they're being cooked like this, they would have a tendency to be a little more susceptible to being bruised. So we're being really careful. There we are. And you can see they've turned color. They're no longer that lovely white. And now what I'm going to do with my mixture is turn the heat up just a wee bit and let it start to reduce. So I have my pears waiting, and I'm going to leave the top off this time, because I want the mixture of the wine and the sugar and the cloves and orange and everything to reduce. So I've turned it up to medium high. And we're going to let that reduce a little bit more till we get to the point where our color comes out more like the ones that you can see in the front here. That wonderful winey red. Of course, these have sat in the red wine overnight as well. And I did turn them. You can put them in the refrigerator once they've cooled down, and they'll be served tomorrow evening for dinner. And as I say, if When you want to serve them, if you want to serve them cold, bring them out from the refrigerator about at least 15 minutes before you're going to serve them, because they will be beautifully cold, but not icy. You don't want them icy. And let them, kind of warm up to room temperature a little bit, and then take your syrup or your the wine liquid and pour it over them. Again, just before serving. You can serve them individually and they'll be just beautiful. If you want to, you could add something like the orange slices or even some other fruit. You could slice a little bit of bananas or let's see, what else could you do? You could put some mint leaves on. It would be really lovely with them and with the wine. And of course, you can always serve cookies or brownies. And so we have a little bit of ginger snaps. Might be a little bit too much flavor, but that depends on your company. And you might want to use just your typical Christmas cookie or snickerdoodles or whatever to serve just as a little bite, one or two with each pair. So different ways to serve them. It would be lots of fun. Your company will enjoy that, and so are you. It's much easier to eat something that's pretty because we do eat with our eyes. And so if we see something that's really, really pretty out there, then we're more likely to partake of it. So here we are. So we have the pomander today. We have the poached pears in red wine. And very shortly, we will have some vegan black bean brownies. And I promised Dr. Jacqueline that I will send pictures of the brownies when they come out and after they've been refrigerated and then cut up into rectangles or squares or whatever. So really, if no one has any questions, I invite you to have an absolutely wonderfully happy, healthy new year. If you have any questions, please get in touch with me at rickiskitchen.net. That's RICKIS kitchen.net. And ask me any of your questions as far as the cooking or the nutrition part of things. You can also go to my website, which is rickiskitchen.net. And it's Ricki at rickiskitchen.net, by the way. Or you can reach me by text and text Ricki's Kitch to 970-618-7607. And as far as gifts, if you haven't given anybody their Christmas gifts yet, or you're planning on giving them New Year's gifts, this makes a wonderful gift. It is my book, Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right. There's over 30 recipes in here, including one for your hair using all food ingredients. And it's a fun book. It's a really fun read because there's food information, where do strawberries come from, and some tips on actually cooking beans, unless you're going to buy them by the can. There's a bean chart in there, tells you how to cook each kind of beans, and there are a lot of different kinds, and they're all excellent. The legume family is excellent as far as especially if you're a vegan or a vegetarian and you want protein. Beans, legumes are one good source for protein. And let's see, we do also on the website, you'll see I have a cup, I have an apron, I have a little notebook, and it's all for fun in your kitchen. So with that, I wish everybody a very healthy, happy new year. Please come back and see us next year, starting with next Friday on the United Kitchens. And tune in, and thank you to everyone out there and everyone at USA Global TV and Radio for a wonderful season and a wonderful year. And we're looking forward to 2023 with lots of good food and good nutrition. And Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much, and come back again. We'll see you next week, next year.